Just so you know, China even hasn't sent an ambassador to the US for 3 months now.
That's very serious. That's extremely serious.
Yeah, because I think the last time they sent their ambassador here, Blinken didn't even meet him, which is very unusual. It's an important country's ambassador.
That's an insult. That's
exactly.
An insult. Yeah.
And then what happened was when he finished here, he actually was promoted to become the foreign minister. Right now, the foreign minister in China is a former ambassador to the US. And Blinken kind of like awkward with him because, he wasn't very polite, very nice to him. And then with that, I think they need to send a new one. They just decided, well, if you're going to treat him with no respect, we're just not sending anybody. I think that's weird.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
That's what's going on right now with China. The two.
I mean, it's completely unsurprising that your current foreign minister was the former ambassador to the United States, of course, because who are you going to send as your ambassador to the United States? The global hegemon, and one of your principal trading partners. You're going to send your best guy. Yeah. And so it's unsurprising that he would go from being ambassador to the United States to being a foreign minister. Perhaps it could have been that he didn't become foreign minister, but he'd have some high level position. So for Blinken to not even have accepted his accreditation and welcomed him to Washington, frankly, it should have been the president of the United States who would accept him as his credentials and welcomed him, because he, as a practical matter, again, just a little bit of forethought as an adult. Yeah. You're thinking this ambassador, he is likely going to be a big deal later. So it's good, if only as a pragmatic sense, to have a fluid and business-like relationship. But they act like children. This is the attitude of spoiled children, arrogant children.
So just so you know, there's no ambassador right now from China.
And the Chinese eventually will probably send somebody. I mean, it's probably just a message that they're sending, but it's just stupid. And in diplomacy, the whole point of diplomacy is always keep the avenues for conversation open.
Yes.
But the Western diplomatic corps, both European and American, they have this bizarre notion that diplomats have to go to war with each other and you have to ignore what the other side says. Again, the attitude of children, of spoiled children, Because of course, you can listen to what somebody else has to say and not like it, not agree with it, and not carry it out, but you at least listen, okay? Because it's always better to have the communication channels open as opposed to closing them out of just petty ideology or some nonsense. But that's what they're doing because they're incompetent. They're incompetent, and this is the great danger for China. These incompetent people can, in their incompetence and their failure, they can wind up doing terrible damage and make decisions that you can't take back. And the Chinese the Chinese leadership is going to have to be extremely patient and careful. I don't know, because I truly believe that there is going to be a war between the United States and China. I mean, I don't say it with any kind of happiness. On the contrary, I think it would be a catastrophe for the world. But I do believe that the Americans are in such a panic mode and their situation is so spiraling out of control that I think that they will decide that a war with China would be a good thing and would somehow fix all their problems, just like the Second World War fixed so many problems for the United States. But of course, the world is very different today than it was in 1941. And the world of today, if the United States were to go to war with China, it would be a catastrophe for the Americans. And it would certainly be very difficult for the Chinese. But it would be so catastrophic for the Americans that the Americans might decide to launch nuclear weapons. I think that is a very real possibility. I think it's something that the Chinese leadership is probably very aware of. And they're probably trying to figure out a way that doesn't happen. Because I think that the American leadership is quite frankly, it's going insane. I mean, it sounds outrageous for me to say this, but when you look at all of their actions and their stupidity and the decisions that anyone with a little common sense would say, no, this is going to have terrible consequences, don't do it, and they do it anyway. That leads me to conclude that it's an insane leadership class that China and Russia is going to have to deal with for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
And speaking of that, I want to ask you a thought about the indictment of Donald Trump, because that's one of those crazy things. Because before this, I thought the presidents, they have some kind of consensus. They don't punish each other, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's a tacit consensus that you don't go after former president.
So you don't get into trouble when the new one come in, right? So I thought that was the consensus, but they broke that. I mean,
completely.
I'm just wondering whether Biden, doesn't he thinking a little bit ahead of time? What if he doesn't get reelected? He doesn't seem thinking any of that.
No, look, you have to understand. First of all, the crimes that Donald Trump is being accused of are process crimes. They're trivial. They are not crimes. First of all, the statute of limitation expired on these crimes, number one. Okay. And number two, when you actually look at what the crime is, see, it's not actually a crime because there's no victim to it. Okay. And it was, it's too complicated to go into it now, but any legal expert who's honest will tell you this is just nonsense. This is just not real. And so the only reason that this is being carried out is as a punitive measure to hurt Donald Trump. Now, basically what you have is the Biden regime is fomenting the imprisonment of his principal opponent in the next election. This is banana republic stuff. This is just just ridiculous. And we're seeing it live happening, and everybody's sort of like shocked that this is happening because again, the American leadership class, they've gone around the bend. Yeah. And on top of that, Obama, Hillary Clinton, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, they've all done far worse crimes than what they're accusing Donald Trump of having done. And they're perfectly free and nothing's happening to them. And what does that tell you? It's just despicable.
I mean, in particular, George W. Bush, he openly lied, right, to get U.S. into a war. I mean, there shouldn't be anything more severe than that, right? But
much more serious, yeah.
Yeah, and the American soldiers died. It's not just Iraqis died, Americans died because of that. But nothing happens. And Obama's excuse, because when people ask him why didn't he, prosecute or some kind of punishment for George W. Bush, he said we need to move on.
Yeah.
Okay. If you had that argument, there is nothing you can punish, right? All the crimes has passed. It's always the past, right? Then you can just move on with everything. But anyway, so that was, I think that's fascinating. Just so you know that actually Donald Trump, compared with others in Biden and Clinton,
nothing.
But also in China, he's more popular than those people.
Oh, sure. Well, he's a very charismatic figure. And he seems to be like a straightforward individual. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump.
No, me either.
He's extremely ineffective.
Yeah.
But this case is absurd. And I say this as somebody who's indifferent to his political future. I don't care if he becomes president again or not, because I think he'd be equally ineffective. But what I find outrageous is this whole charade going on. And it's funny. It's just amusing in a very dark way, and it just shows more that the Americans are lost. They are lost as a people, and all you can do is just stand back and watch and hope that the thrashing around doesn't affect you. That's all you can do. Yeah.
And in China, the reason they like Trump better, not that they like him, but they like him better, both the government and the people, I would say, is because he's more straightforward. He started a trade war. Nobody likes the trade war, but he's more straightforward. Okay, he doesn't like the deficit, so he started a trade war. Yeah. Versus Biden,
he tells you to your face what he's going to do, and he does it, or at least tries to do it. Whereas Biden, he lies to your face and does exactly the opposite of what he told you to your face he was going to do. And you find out later that he was always going to be doing this other thing. And so when he lied to you, he knew that he was lying to you. That's why the Chinese leadership hates Biden so much. That's why every leader hates Biden so much, because he is doing X And when he goes to your face, he says, oh, no, we're doing this other thing. But he knows he's lying. And he keeps on doing the other thing. That's why everybody hates it. Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia hates his guts. Vladimir Putin does not like him at all. Xi Jinping also despises him because they lie. I mean, Xi said to Biden, you know, you lied to me to my face over some issue.
The Taiwan
and Biden
thing
was just like, and Biden was like,
he said, you know, he said to President Xi, oh, we recognize one China, you know, Taiwan is part of it. In the meantime, he doesn't do anything with this visit by Nancy Pelosi, which is the same party. They're in the same party. If he want to stop her, he could.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Just a call.
And then if you look at their website on the State Department, they don't put in like Taiwan's part of China in there. It's, you know, the small things, he just sneaky, very sneaky.
Yeah, but what's going on is that they are deliberately trying to provoke the Chinese into an overreaction.
Yeah.
Okay? The whole point of Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan, and by the way, the new
Kevin McCarthy.
Kevin McCarthy, he also wants to go or is going or something. I don't know how it is, but he's going to do something similar.
He's going to meet her today. At least that's according to what his office is saying. They're going to meet today in Los Angeles. Yeah, something like that.
All of this is just provocation. All of this is just provocation to provoke the Chinese into an overreaction. That's the whole purpose of it. Whether it succeeds or not, you know, time will tell. But these provocations are going to continue to escalate. You know, I mean, these provocations are going to continue. And I think that what will happen probably is that at some point, the Americans are going to cross a red line that the Chinese say, okay, we're done. And there will be some war. You know, insofar as this SMO is concerned here in Ukraine, the United States, under the guise of NATO, provoked the Russians, provoked them, and then finally the Russians said, okay, we're just going to have to go through with this war. You know, I mean, that's the American mode of action. And they always say the same thing. Oh, you know, they attacked unprovoked. No, that's a lie. There were all of these provocations over years. And finally, the target of the provocation said, you know, enough. I don't know how the Chinese leadership is going to handle this in particular. If they are going to be very patient and cautious and never react to a provocation, no matter how bad, or if they will say at some point, you know, enough. And then the Americans will have the excuse of like, oh, we didn't do anything. We were just being innocent little snowflakes and the bad Chinese attacked us or something, you know? I think that is the game of the Americans, and the Chinese leadership will have to be very clever in order to outsmart these provocations of the Americans, because these provocations are severe.
They will continue.
Serious.
Last thing is, I want to ask you about the de-dollarization. So, so what do you see is happening? You know, it's faster than what we expected, at least
much faster
than what I expected.
Yeah.
So where are we heading? And I also more curious, what is the world in particular for Americans? You know, what is the world going to be when dollar is no longer the reserve currency?
What is the dollar going to be once the dollar? What is going to happen to the Americans?
Yeah.
After the dollar is no longer the reserve currency, well, they're going to go bankrupt, and they're going to have to print dollars in order to pay all their bills. And the dollars that they print will become progressively more worthless, and they will have hyperinflation, and that's the inevitable outcome. This is the inevitable outcome. It might take a while, because there are very clever people who will try to keep the American system afloat. But the outcome is inevitable, because if the rest of the world de-dollarizes, then there will be no more demand for for American bonds. Because remember, the United States emits bonds that it sells to the rest of the world. And those bonds, the cash that comes in, they use it to finance their deficits. And see, if the rest of the world stops buying treasury bonds, then the only solution is for the American Federal Reserve to start printing more money so that the American government can pay its liabilities. And when that much more money starts entering circulation, the dollar starts losing its value and becomes worthless, like Weimar Germany. And so, yeah, that seems to be the inevitable outcome of this situation. And so, and precisely because of that economic collapse, the American leadership class would have a greater incentive to go forth to war as a way to disguise and hide the problem of a collapsing economy, you see? And that's why these next 3 years are going to be among the most dangerous in human history, because we are seeing the collapse of the first global hegemon, and we are watching it collapse in real time. And, it is collapsing, and what will happen because of it, nobody knows. Sorry about that. That's the air raid siren here in Kharkov. So maybe this is a good point to wind down the show.
Yeah.
As the sirens blare. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can't do anything about it. Yeah,
that's fine. Well, one more thing is, do you want to say a few words about your upcoming book? Whatever you can tell us. Is that a political thing?
No, it'll be a while. It'll be quite a few months. So I'll leave that for later. But yeah, I'm writing something. I mean, by trade, I'm a writer, and I'm writing basically an explanation as to how we got to where we are. That's basically the story of this book. And I'm
looking forward to it. Now, is there anything more you want to tell the Chinese audience before I let you go?
No, I think I pretty much covered it. And I want to thank you very much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure. And I hope that my perspective has helped your audience. And
yes.
Anytime you want me on again, I'm happy to come on a broadcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, the election, the war, de-dollarization, all these things happening. So I would like to check back with you. So
Sure, no problem.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Take care.